Okay, so Raphael was in the first cohort of the T2 Accelerator, so 2016, 2017. So he had a company here, and he's going to go through that. But what I liked about him is, so we caught up, he graduates, move on, has his company. I haven't heard from him in a while. He called and said, "Can I tell you what I'm up to?" And I'm like, "Sure," thinking, right? Either one, he's still with that first company, or two, he's moved on to work for somebody, right? Well, wrong. So he has launched several companies now. He's been a part of several company exits. He's also worked for Google, which I think is super cool, and is actually fundraising for his third company, I believe. And so I brought him here to talk to you guys about how to pitch. So obviously he's been through our accelerator program. He's been in front of investors. He's worked for companies where he's had to develop many pitch decks. So he's going to talk to you about his journey a little bit, and then how to pitch, some do's and don'ts, maybe some best practices, and then we're going to leave it open for you guys to ask whatever you want. He's a cool guy. So he's spent a lot of time with us this morning at 1 Million Cups to share his journey. And then tomorrow he has 6 sessions. I packed him full all day with companies that want to hear from him and his expertise. So thank you for being here. He flew in yesterday from California. And so I'm going to let him introduce himself, but Raphael. You're on. Okay.
All right, cool. Yeah. There we go. It's always awkward doing the mic in one hand and the clicker in the other hand. So it's use the lapel mic. But thank you for the introduction. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm standing at the podium. I feel like you kind of get more into the middle of the room here. But yeah, so I will jump in. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself as just kind of a quick intro for everyone, so you guys get a little bit of background on me. I'll talk about my companies, my experience. I'm talking about kind of the topic today in terms of how to help your audience with your pitch. And I will have some time for some Q&A, but if anyone has a really question at any point, feel free to stop me. I'm happy to answer questions along the way. All right, so helping the audience with your pitch. One thing I'll call out, there's a QR code on here, this entire deck. You can download it. I'll show this QR code. Download this deck and use it for your own reference at any point. Feel free. And then my email will be at the end of the deck as well. So if you guys have questions or your work notes start, anything at all, I'm happy to be a resource to everyone here. So just going through what our agenda will be. So one, we'll talk a little bit about me. I'll give you kind of a quick overview on some things that I've done. We'll do some pitch deck basics just so you guys get a sense of kind of what audience. Then we'll talk through some really kind of core slides and some of the core elements of really an effective pitch. We'll talk through a few of the optional slides, and I'll have those kind of interwoven throughout, but we'll have an ending piece there as well. We're going to be able to see some of those optional pieces, and then we'll have our Q&A. So covering a little bit about me, I went to Texas Tech University, super proud of that, got my degree here. It was a fantastic experience. To this day, I still say years of my life. We were not nearly as good at basketball then as we are now. So fantastic to see it kind of grow in that. In terms of my career, I am a 3-time startup founder. I started my first company when I was a freshman in college here at Texas Tech in Coleman Hall. We had this cool company that had these shirts that would light up to the sound of your voice. We had like Texas Tech logos. We were in all the bookstores, and then we got a number of different Big 12 schools as well. So we were trying to grow that, and that was our first company. I was 18 of just being a bunch of engineering buddies trying to make some. Then eventually I started my second company here at the Innovation Hub. We had a company called the Resumakers. We had effectively like your resume, so you would just effectively tell it what you wanted on your resume and kind of about your career goals, and build a resume kind of customized to you. So started that company, and then my third company is the one I'm going to talk to you guys about today and show you some of the pitch deck pieces on Social Crowd. It's an employee motivation platform. Then just a bit about that. So Social Crowd is currently used by a number of different clients. We started the company earlier this year. We have clients like Sonic Drive-In, Motorola Solutions, as well as Allegiant Airlines. Prior to that, I was at a company called Akinsipe. So Akinsipe tech startup. So we provided a service very similar to OpenTable, but for surgeons to book time at surgery centers and hospitals. Sold that company to Bain Capital at the end of 2020 in an 8-figure for Lucian and I. I was previously at Google, worked on a lot of products that you guys are probably familiar with. So YouTube, Google Ads, Google Search. So lots of cool things on that front. Spent some time on the end. Well, and I spent some time prior to that as a consultant. So I worked on growth strategy, large direct-to-consumer brand. So Southwest Airlines, project with Marvel, and also spent some time working at Chick-fil-A as well. So I've had kind of a diverse career and gotten to work on a lot of different cool projects. So that's me in a nutshell. But we will push forward to stuff you guys are really here to hear about. I know you guys are here to just hear me talk about myself. So jumping in on the pitch deck basics. So, when I think about a pitch deck, there are tons of different things in your pitch deck, and lots of people get caught up in kind of what's the right way to frame your deck. But one of the things I always go back to is that not all pitch decks serve the same purpose, and not all audience, but all pitch decks should tell a really great story. The reason why anyone buys your products or invests in you is because they believe you're best. People who are able to sell products or raise money tell an amazing story that gets people bought in. So you believe that their vision of what the world can be or should be is the way that the world will be. And that's so when we think about what this means, there's two kinds of decks that come to mind. So there are decks for investors and there are decks for. Today we're going to focus more on the investor side of it. Then there's live presentation decks, and then there's more of a read-only deck. So the kind of deck you would email to someone. We're going to focus more on the read-only deck. Talking with customers or investors, you're not going to be up there doing a Shark Tank experience. You're going to be doing a whole lot more of a kind of walkthrough of what your product is. Then the other part I like to call out is the goal of your deck. Not to close it. You will never send someone a deck and they just say, take my money now. We want your product. We want to invest. The goal of the deck is to get you in the room. You want to send a deck to someone that makes someone say, this is interesting. I want to learn more. That's the reality of your deck. So the goal is to get you to the room. So now we'll talk through some of the core slides. So the first thing, simple, straightforward, need a title slide. This seems super basic, but you'd be surprised how often people overcomplicate a title slide. Just keep it simple. Who are you? Logo, company name, some kind of slogan that just gives people a sense of what you're bringing to the table. So with Social Crowd, we're a daily employee motivation platform. Very straightforward. I'm sure all of you are saying this thing, man, this is groundbreaking title slide. But jumping forward there, the next thing is the problem slide. And this is your first opportunity to get people hooked. A problem slide is really a key part of helping people understand what's happening in the world today that needs to problem that exists that is so important, matters so much to people that you're going to invest time in building this, but you also asking these investors to invest money in helping you solve this problem. So for us with Social Crowd, where we focus is on the fact that motivating employees around company goals is really hard. And people hear this and they're like, okay, well, that seems kind of straightforward. But when you think about it, problems to go and solve, the problems that people believe that you can actually solve are the ones that make sense to people, right? If I told you that I wanted to solve the problem of making certain screws on a rocket that goes out and looks for rare metals on asteroids, how many people in here would be able to align or understand that problem? Most people would be like, I don't know if that's a big problem or a small problem or a problem or hard. So the best companies in many are on problems that people understand, and they're problems that seem big enough that they a large market, but also straightforward enough to where people can understand the opportunity to go out and fix them. So the next is the solution. And this is the part where many times with the solution, people tend to think, that's where I'm going to tell them what my product is. When you do this next part here on your solution, this is your opportunity to guide the story for an investor. So when you tell an investor, here's this problem in the world, it's hard to motivate employees around company goals. The next step there is not saying, here's my product. The next step is to tell them, here's this solution that should exist. This is the way that we need to try and go out and solve that problem. And this is going to differentiate this from your product because it's an opportunity for you to guide the thinking of an investor, but not directly push their product. So when we look at what we've done here with Social Crowd, the way that we position this is that solution is a daily platform that automatically tracks, reminds, or rewards for hitting company goals. And we're framing that, and this is obviously built towards us talking about our product because we're an employee motivation platform, but we're not necessarily talking about the product directly just yet. We're guiding the thinking of the investor. We're getting them onto the ship so we can take them forward. Then, now that I've told you there's this big problem, this is the way this problem should be solved. Then I get to tell you how we have solved this problem. So at Social Crowd, for us, we built a daily employee motivation platform that motivates employees around company goals by automating the process of tracking, reminding, and rewarding employees. And this is the part where I call out, it's very specific and intentional. So not only have we told you the problem, told you the way that this needs, what our product does to solve that problem. So you have a sense of how real this is. Now, this is the first one that I would say is an optional slide. This is something that can vary in many ways depending on what you're bringing to the table. So with Social Crowd, many people here are like, okay, you automates the process of motivating and rewarding employees, but how does that work exactly? Because when we tell people that we can track and we can remind, many times they ask us like, how are you tracking that data? How does that work? So one thing we're very intentional about is showing them in the deck how it works. We're not going through all the mechanics. We're not showing them all of our secret sauce, but we're giving them a sense of here are the mechanisms and ways that people hide that way with us and think ways that they can use it themselves. Now, this is optional. Sometimes you have products that you don't need how it works. If I told you that, I've got to start sell pizza, you probably don't necessarily need a how it works slide to explain how you sell pizza in a way, innovative way of selling or maybe delivering that pizza. So those are kind of key ways to think about the difference there. Not a required one, but a really great one to make the concept clear. Now, one of the other ones that I'm a really big fan of, and one of the things I think is incredibly important when it comes to investors, is having a really why now slide. So raise your hand here if you ever used a service like Grubhub or Uber Eats. How many of you would have used that service 5 years ago? Both hands. How many of you would have used it 10 years ago? 15 years ago? 20 years ago? So one thing I want to call out, when we think of services like Uber Eats, Grubhub, and all of those kinds of companies, those are companies that we think of as like, man, these. But one of the things that's kind of a newsflash for you is that like Uber Eats, Raphael, they were companies at the very beginning of the internet era in 1995, 96 that were trying to do these other Uber Eats are doing today. Now, one of the problems for that, and I'm sure many of you guys can, one, that thing that everyone has in their pocket right now, the supercomputer that we get to carry around, people didn't have these then. In addition to that, mainstream dial-up internet in their homes and offices, meaning that you had to actually get on the computer, and if someone were to make a phone call in your house, your internet service would get interrupted. Then you would need to be able to take that order that you just placed and get in front of a driver who was somewhere in the country or in the world so that they could go out and get that order, get it to pick up that order from a restaurant and get it to your house. Now, today it seems really straightforward. But the significance of why the why now is super important is that if I'm an investor in 1995 and you pitch me Grubhub or Uber Eats, I'm probably going to say this doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't see how you could actually solve all of those problems to overcome those steps to make that. And on the other hand, if you're someone who's able to come to the table and say, because of the innovation of the smartphone and the fact that everyone pocket, because tons of restaurants are online, because people as fast as they're able to flip a light on or turn on running water. Now as an investor, I'm like, this is all this momentum that has come together from all of these businesses and markets of scale that have made your business of Uber Eats a reality today. Does that make sense to everyone? In a very similar sense for us at Social Crowd and what we're building, there's a lot of market factors that have been a function of the pandemic, the change in the way that people work, the change in the number of technology and SaaS-based solutions that people use in their workplaces that makes it to where for us, have a solution that automates that process, motivating employees. And this is a key part in terms of getting your investors booked in. We're picking the perfect moment, the perfect day and age for you to go out and solve this problem with your solution. So this is a really critical one that I can't emphasize enough. One of the key differences between companies that get funded and companies that don't is great understanding of why right now is the time to be solving that problem. So the next one is a vision and a mission statement slide. So a vision and a mission statement slide is one that's optional. It's great to have people your vision or your mission in the future. It's important for you as a company to know what that mission or vision is. Always going to define how an investor looks at your company. So for us, it's something that we include in our deck because we really do our vision of the future. We've got, but it's not required for every deck. But one of those things that we like to call out with our vision, and the reason that I think this is your chance to kind of sell your sexy, big, lofty goal to an investor. So for us, we've got a big vision. And today, it's a best-in-class employee motivation platform, which is a nice size goal, good size opportunity, huge total addressable market. But our vision, the thing that's going to get people to believe that, because if you're an investor, before in any way. Okay, so giving you guys some context to just how investors think. If you've pitched, there's for many of you in here who might have used like your own personal investing, like a tool like Robinhood or something like that. Most of us are just like investing in public companies. But when you're a venture capitalist, someone who's investing in a lot of early stage companies, and you're writing check sizes that can be anywhere from 500,000, a couple million for a seed stage company to 10 to 50 or 100 million for a later stage company. If I put that money in, I'm expecting as a venture capitalist to get a 10x return. You see what I'm saying? So for me to get a 10x return, I have to believe that this is going to be massive. This can't be, just the best in Texas or the best with this small group of people. This needs to be something that changes the world, right? This needs to be something that has a massive opportunity because the bigger my check is that I give you, I expect you to return my money in a really massive way. And that's the reason why the vision slide is a great way to get investors to believe that, if you're selling lemonade today, that right there is something as an investor. Now I can see how if I invest in a lemonade stand, that's a cool business. It might be a lifestyle business, but it's not going to 10x my money, right? But if I invest in a lemonade stand that has the potential of Simply Lemonade, Coca-Cola, and so on, or a company that could get acquired by Coca-Cola or PepsiCo, now that's a good place for me to put my money. So the vision slide, the mission slide, not always required, but it is a great way to tell people your vision of the future and how you're going to change the world so they can get bought in and join you on that rocket ship. That makes sense? Awesome. So one of the next ones, this is kind of straightforward, very fundamental, necessary for every market slide. And the market slide is really important because it's one of those that, not every investor you're going to talk to knows your product or knows your market. If I were to ask people in here how much you know about the market for employee incentives or rewards, how many people in here would have a good sense of that market? Anyone here? Yeah, that's what I figured. So it's able to show them how big is the market, and you'd be surprised how many times probably haven't done the research, right? Because if you just simply go in quick Google search, most industries, there's someone out there, some research firm that's doing a lot of the work to what is the size of your market, and that size, it can know all of these numbers perfectly, say it's going to exactly increase by 2% or 5%. But they want to make sure you have a sense of what the market is, but also how big that market is. Because going back to that idea of that joining you on that rocket ship to get a 10x return, I need to believe you tell me the global market is $100 million. $100 million, the average person is like, that's a ton of money, right? But if I'm an investor who wants to get a 10x return, market for what you're pursuing is $100 million. That means for me to make money, I would need to assume you can get everyone in the world who's spending money on that just so you can get to the 100 million. Right? Now, if I'm an investor who can look at this and say the global market for this is nearly dollars, and we believe that, hey, you can go out and capture even 5 or 10% of that, I can still make a really fantastic return on this, even if you don't win the entire market. Does that make sense? And now the other part of this, the other thing that's really important for getting investors bought in is making sure that you understand what is your addressable market. Because even though there's a $30 billion market for our company, the US market is 14 billion. We don't necessarily we focus in particular in our business on blue collar workforces. And by focusing on that, we have a target market that we've built our product to serve, but it also tells me I understand a specific space in which I can go out and win and capture, but it still gives them a sense that assuming we win this space, we have a huge opportunity to go after the rest of the world. So this is a key slide that you want to have, you want to get right if you want to know your numbers. This is one of those things that's incredibly important for everyone to have in their deck and for you to understand in terms of the way that you build your business. Because not every business is built the same, and your opportunity to earn revenue or to make money on your business can vary dramatically. You could have a business subscription based, it could be transactional, contracts. There's lots of different ways that your business can be structured. So being able to demonstrate your business model, especially if there's innovation in your business model, that's something that's really powerful. So for us as a company, the way that we make money is we make money on monthly subscriptions. So we charge our customers $3 per user per month, which is great because when we go to an investor and say, we've got Allegiant Airlines, we've got has got 50,000 employees. So that $3 per user is now $150,000 in monthly revenue for us across their workforce. So that's a huge opportunity there. On the other side of that, with the way that our platform works, when employees hit their goals, they're earning points. Those points they can then redeem for a gift card. So we've negotiated contracts with hundreds of different retailers. So by negotiating those, we now have the opportunity to sell those gift cards on our platform. So when employees redeem their points, they're redeeming them for a gift card to Amazon or Apple or to Taco Bell or really a number of different places. And by doing so, we earn revenue on that. So not only do we get $10 per user per month on average in gift card redemption revenue, we earn $3 monthly subscription. So for anyone who's not familiar with ARPU, ARPU, that's our average revenue per user per month. So we earn approximately around $13 per user per month. This is a really important step in your deck because now, not only have I seen this amazing vision of the future. I've seen your product, I've seen the problem that you're solving. Now I'm like, hey, this can make and one of those things, especially in, if you guys market landscape that we're in today, we're in a somewhat depressed economic market. So for investors, it's super important that they can look at this and make real money, that it's not just simply going to be bleeding cash. So this is a super important one. Now, going forward from there into the competition slide, one of the things that I see lots of startups do that kills them in terms of any walk up there and say, we are the only ones doing this. We are the first company ever to possibly think about this. No one's ever done this. No one can do this. And for anyone with common sense, the reality is like most things, think of an idea right now, pull out your phone, go to Google. I guarantee you there's someone else out there doing something like it, something similar. Think of a name for something. How many people here have social media? Anyone have an Instagram, Facebook, TikTok? With your handles for your social media. How many of you came up with something like, I am at Chill Bro, that's the name of my Instagram name. And you're like, I'm gonna go on there. You go into Instagram and you start putting in, my handle is at Chill Bro. And then you get on there and you're like, oh man, the name's already taken. Yeah. The Chill Bro. And then you get on there and you start, and someone's already got at the Chill Bro. And the more you look and look and look, see that all those clever handles that you thought no one else would have thought of, someone's already taken, right? So the reality is the same thing is very true in business, where whatever idea you have, whatever innovation you're working on, odds are there's someone else out there who's trying to do the same thing. And when you think back to that market slide that I was showing you, those are the other people competing with you. So when you tell investors there's $10 billion, $20 billion market, and then you tell the investor, well, I'm the only one there, they know with a quick Google search, other people exist. And those other people want all of that market the same way that you do. And then the next piece of that, though, and going back to what you'll see at the top there, is why do those other current options suck? That's the thing that's important to tell them. There are competitors. Other people are trying to do this, but they suck. They're not as good as us. They're not doing all the amazing things that we're doing. They don't understand the customer as well as we do. They don't understand the way to solve the problem as well as we do. And that's the magic by investing in us. And that's where, with our competition slide, for example, there's tons of ways you can do a competition slide. But one of the things that we set a frame up for investors is that when it comes to advertising and motivating employees, there's three key things that you want to be able to do. The first thing is you want to be able to track your employees, have an understanding of are they hitting those goals. The second thing that you want to do is be able to remind employees so that you don't have to go knocking on someone's door and say, hey, John, hey, Jane, are you getting this done? You want a system that does that for you. And then you also want a system that rewards them the moment that it takes. And we always pitch this to investors as we have to watch forward, where the moment they're going to work every day, it reminds them, here are all your goals. The moment they quote unquote close that ring like they would in Apple Watch, they get an instant reward for it. And it's like that sense of that difference power within our platform. And when you look at the market today, these are all massive players in the market. For anyone who's familiar with our space, these companies aren't small. Blueboard just closed around a funding of around $50 million. So there's some big players out there. $100 million in funding. So it's like I have a deep awareness of my competitors, but I know that what we're doing is smarter and better than those competitors. And when I go to the table with an investor, I know their product really well. I know their gaps really well. So even though they've got more funding, more money, I can speak to that and frame it in a really clear way on why we're different and why we're better. And I frame that around those three key components there. All of our competitors, they do cool rewards. Blueboard, they do cool rewards. You can do a scuba dive class. You can send your employees to a massage. Snappy, you can send people AirPods. And they all have different things they do, but they're all just doing that one thing, rewarding. None of them are able to track your employees' performance. None of them are able to find your employees these and just trying to come up with what are more cool rewards. We're competing in areas that are directly impacting, and we're also providing great rewards. And it's easy for us to scale the rewards piece over time to start to add in AirPods or vacations or any of those things. But it's a lot harder for them to come in we're doing here because it takes lots of work in terms of our technology and innovations and integration to be able to do that. So now as an investor, when we think about what this means in terms of hooking that investor in, they're on this rocket with me that, man, this is a massive market. This is a huge problem. This is a great solution. And for all the other people that are out there that are trying to solve this, they're not solving it the right way. Their product sucks. That's what you want them to believe out there. And the other part I'll call out for everyone is that anytime you're pitching investors, don't want to lie to your investors, but you do need to get investors of the world. You don't want to walk into that pitch and say, hey, like, tiny thing. You want them to believe you're going to do this big thing. And all those other things out there are awful. And you have to be able to sell that vision and get them motivated around that by being deeply aware of where your competitors are and also how you can go forward and be able to beat out those competitors. That makes sense to everyone? Awesome. So then one more thing on just the competition slide. This is one of those things that we put into our deck just to give people a sense of it. And it's really effective for us often do it, or if they're reading it on their phone. But when you look at the old way, how convoluted the process is. For someone who's a manager today, they have all of these different steps of checking different tools, putting employees in a separate tool, sending them reminders, and a manager has to manage this process themselves today. But with Social Crowd, they simply set it in, runs the process for them. And this is also a really effective way for us to demonstrate, even separate just from showing one-to-one of us against the competitor, it's a great way for us to be able to show them how our product solves a problem versus the way that our competitors are approaching solving a problem. Our competitors, they live just right here in this one space as a rewards tool, and they just simply wait for a manager to come in and reward and do all the other work. And with our product, or even a class project, you guys know there's a ton of moving parts, and you don't want to have to do all these things to check in on everything. You want to be able to have everyone do their piece of it, and then you as a manager and someone leading the project, be in a position to focus on the things that are actually driving value. So this is a key part for us in telling our story. And in terms of milestones, one of the things that's really important here with milestones, and milestones is definitely an optional slide. And this is being full transparency on our business, where we are in our growth story. So I'm happy to kind of walk through this and answer more questions on this. But milestones is an optional slide. You don't have to put milestones in. It's not necessarily required. Sometimes you can tell a great story without milestones. But one of the things that's really powerful about having milestone slides, especially when you're a company. So like we were founded earlier this year, we are not going to be able to tell the same story that, you know, think back to some of our competitors who have been around 5 or 6 years, they're going to be able to tell a story about how they've done 10, 20, $30 million in revenue. That's not going to be our story because we were founded 6 months ago, right? So that's going to be something where the milestone slide is a great way for you to tell investors how you're moving quickly and how you're accomplishing a lot in a short period of time. Because the one thing that business wants and every investor wants is they want to know that you're able to accelerate your path very quickly. So for us, when we show our milestone slide, we're able to tell a story that as a bootstrap outside capital, we were able to grow very quickly and bring on really valuable clients in a very short period of time. So in Q1 of this year, we founded Social Crowd. Whenever I do a live presentation with investors, I tell this kind of sexy story of how, you know, I was managing a team and I had these troubles and these things that into Anzi with the mic there. But I had this team, I had all this trouble in terms of motivating my, and I was like, that eureka moment, And I came up with Social Crowd. Now, there's a lot more to the story than that, but that also goes back to kind of selling that vision and kind of getting investors bought in. But we were founded in Q1. In Q2, we were able to sign Sonic Drive-In. And we also tell a really powerful story with this too, around this. And one of the things in our full deck, there's a subset of notes that we put there as around Sonic Drive-In. So Sonic Drive-In is owned by a really large management company that owns Fire Brands that owns Sonic Drive-In. They own Baskin Robbins, Buffalo Wild Wings, and a ton of other really popular chains. So when we tell that story with investors that, hey, months of starting our company, we're able to sign Sonic Drive-In, but by signing them, we're now in a network that has some of the largest restaurants in the world. Now, for an investor, even though you're not there yet, I can see is you got traction and path in terms of your growth rate that can lead to something massive. Then Q3, we launched our beta. So in a matter of 6 months, we went from idea, client, to having a product. That tells the investor these people can make things happen, actually bring things into the world. Then we signed Thrive Juice Lab, which is a juice food chain across Southern California. Right now in Q4, we're raising a pre-seed round of capital. For anyone who's not familiar with different rounds of capital, there's a pre-seed and seed. Happy to answer questions on that, but we're raising a pre-seed round of capital, and then we've had a massive Q. Signed Motorola, we signed Norwegian Airlines, Whisker Cloud, they're a large veterinary and marketing platform. So it's like, I would get an investor that in a series of effectively months, we were to bring on some really large clients to try out our product. That tells them you've got a path for growth. And when they think back to these competitors here, it gives them a reason to believe that you guys have a chance to beat them out. Especially when you're a small company starting out, it's super powerful to get people to. So going forward there, we've got a great story over $1 billion in contracted ARR, and I know there's a lot of acronyms that we're using in here, so we're not that's contracted annual recurring revenue, but we'll get $1 billion in contracted ARR by Q2, and then in Q3 of next year, we're going to be raising another round of funding in a range. So that's where we are with milestones, and that's the power of milestones. It gives people a sense of what you've done and where you're headed so that they can be bought into your vision. Then the next part here is talking about key metrics. This can look like lots of different things for lots of different customers and lots of different businesses. So when you think about these key metrics, if you're a company that hasn't necessarily made a ton of money yet, or you're not necessarily going to make a lot of money in the near future, this slide here on the traction, you can tell lots of different stories here. Let's say your business, like, let's go back to the Uber example, or the Uber Eats example. So for any of those kinds of businesses, you may not necessarily be super profitable, you may not have made a ton of money on it yet. One of the things that, or even another good example, Grubhub, one of the things that they did in their first round of venture capital that they were raising was that when they showed their traction slide, they hadn't made a ton. What they did put up was that, hey, in our first 6 months, 500 orders of food that have gone through our platform. So then now, as an investor, I can say, well, hey, but in terms of revenue, but they are getting users to use the platform. Or if you think in the early days of a lot of social media platforms, a lot of the traction that they show on there is not, hey, we're making all of this money through advertising revenue, but we're also able to tell a story of, hey, we got a new platform. What's one of these new social platforms? Be Real? That's one of those new ones. See, I'm kind of what this is. But in all seriousness, though, on their pitch decks, that's one of the things they put in is their number of users. And for us, as we tell the story of our traction, we're a relatively new company. When we sign all of these clients, Motorola is not going to sign a contract and be like, hey, employees are going to start using it tomorrow. It's like a contract that's got a subset of their users starting out to use it, and that pilot goes well. And it's always important to call out, are those paying clients, but they're paid pilots for us. So across these 5 customers, they represent 90K contracted ARR just for their pilots. But then we're able to tell investors a story there about, even if we don't sign any new clients, if we simply just scale within, so you're starting with a few thousand of Allegiant Airlines employees, if we scale to all of their employees and do that across these same customers, those represent $4 million. So now as I'm raising that capital, there's something that I can believe here on this path. So that's kind of the path there in terms of telling the story on traction. Then go-to-market is another really key important one. With your go-to-market slide, you want something that tells the investor that you have acquired customers, because your first customers, it was your mom or your uncle or your got a cousin who's like, I'm with you, I'm gonna support you, I'm gonna buy something. But if you're gonna actually build a business at scale, we have real customers on a consistent opportunity to grow and move more quickly. So one of the things we talk about within our deck is our land and expand strategy. So we've landed in Sonic, for example, we're growing quickly to several new Sonics. We're going to be at another 34 Sonics here in January. So then when I tell an investor that story, it's like, man, they had 6, 30 or 40 that are coming up. Plus, they're scaling within Inspired Brands, Robbins, and Buffalo Robbins. So now that's a vision that they something that's sequential or something repeatable that they can. So go to market, absolutely necessary. And on the team front, one of the things that I always try to tell everyone when it comes to pitching investors and raising capital, 2 things that are always kind of just the biggest difference. Has anyone here used Slack before? Okay, awesome. So Slack, for example, does anyone know what Slack started as? Like what the company was originally founded as? So Slack was a gaming company to start. And that was their vision. That's what they raised money on. These investors bought it. And I mean, their games are okay, but their games kind of suck. But one of the things that they did really well is that they built this internal, and that's what became Slack. And as they were working and building that company, they were able to realize, awesome here with their games, but this thing that built to be able to communicate and go back and find things. This is really freaking cool. And they turned and kind of pivoted their business all around that, and they were able to scale. Now, the reason that I bring that up is that as an investor, they recognize the idea that you have today, the business that you have today. It may not be the thing that gets you to that mountaintop, but they want to believe that you are a team that can go out and accomplish that. They want to believe that you are the kinds of people who make things happen. Hit the trees, find the people, find the customers, find the innovation. Those are the things that they want to believe about you. So the team is one of the most important things. And anytime you meet an investor, they're always going to. One of the things that kills businesses all the time is that start a business and like, this is my best friend. We've been buddies for forever. Nothing can break us up. And then you realize along the way that your best friend, like, with like, watch a football game, but your best friend might not be the best person to start a business. If I'm an investor and that dynamic happens where you guys decide to split up, that could kill the business and I could lose my money. So they want to believe that you have a team that can make those things skill set to figure those things out along the way. So really important. And then the other part I mentioned that there were 2 key things that we always care about here. But one, the team really matters, and also in terms of that why and how. It gives them a sense of even if you don't have all the business people, right market at the right time, pursuing something that matters. And then the ask. So if you're talking to an investor, you gotta be asking for something, right? Like you want something, and then you want everything. Because running a business is hard if you don't necessarily have the capital to do it. So for us, we're raising a pre-seed round of $500K. We're very explicit in terms of what we're raising. When we talk with investors, we let them know our terms of what we're raising. And it's important to be straightforward so they get a sense of how much you need, what you're going to accomplish with that money. And what so for us, we're raising $500K, which is not like a convertible note or safe. Does anyone here know what a convertible note or safe is? Let's get a show of hands of people who don't know what that is. No shame in that. Okay, so quick things on just so most of you guys, when you think about starting businesses, you think of Shark Tank, right? You walk up there, you say, I'm Jim Bob, I've got a cookie business. This is amazing. I want to give you 10% for $100,000, right? Like that's how most of us think of it. Which in a sense is the way a lot of raising works in terms of equity. You're getting that. But when you're a new business, a really small business, is your company worth, is your company business worth $1 million? Is it worth $10 million? Worth $1 billion? It's hard to say, right? We could say like, oh, you did 10,000 bucks a month, and we could give you some multiple on that. But the reality is that it's hard to gauge how big your business is. So one of the common things that a lot of startups do is that when they're raising capital, they'll raise on what's called a convertible note or SAFE, which is effectively for lack of a better way of putting it, it's a loan that converts into shares. Meaning, if I raise money from you, I'll raise my 500,000, and we'll say you don't know how much the company is worth today. Now, I'm going to give you that money, and in the future, when you do raise a round where you are saying, hey, we're raising $2 million on a valuation of our business at $50. At that point, once we've said how much the company is worth, we're then going to take my 500K that I've given you, and there's to it, but the basics is that 500K would then convert as a portion of that $50 million valuation. So that concept makes sense to everyone. So it's important to be aware of how you, not only how much you want to raise, but how you raise that money. How they should work with you. And not every investor does convertible. Not every investor is going to want to do equity early stage. So it's important for you to have a sense of what you're raising and how you're raising it. So then optional slides, I'll just go through these pretty quick, but you can show product slides. Product screenshots are great. We all get excited, but the reality is that product screenshots are not always necessary for your success. How it works, I covered that. Vision and mission, milestones, and yeah, those are some of the optional ones. So feel free to scan the QR code, shoot me an email if you have any questions. And I feel like I was probably way over my time there.
Okay.
Okay, well, cool. But yeah, I'll leave some time for Q&A. So thank you.
Is the innovation of teams over here like preach it, preach it? Like you like hit on some things where like if they only knew that information every time they get in front of us. So very good. Thank you. We're going to be able to share your videos with people that are going through our competitions. That's very helpful. So questions about the pitch deck, about Raphael, about his history, whatever you want to do. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for all that information. It's great. I have a question not directly related to that though. Related to you personally, you mentioned that you work with Google and Marvel and some other places. What would you advise a young person here in Lubbock, Texas, as far as those sound like cool places to work? How do I even know that they're looking for someone that I can fill these positions? How do I know they have positions? What are my connections to those types of cool environments?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that I'll try to not be super long-winded on this, but the first thing I saw every young person, I know you're all likely active on any other social media platforms, but create a LinkedIn is definitely your professional social network. For any of you guys that have LinkedIn, add me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to be able to help support your careers. But that's the first thing to do, be active on LinkedIn because there's a lot of opportunities that can come as a result. But the second part of it that I'll speak to, this is something I kind of I've done a number of talks on. I'll share a link to a really good podcast that was one of my podcasts. There's a concept of career acceleration. And one of the things that's a part of that, your career is broken down into different phases. Oh, everyone, anytime I talk about find your superpower. And that's the way I always kind of phrase it, because the early part, I think it's easy to feel like, hey, like I need to be job, I need to work at this company, but just get started in your career, like you don't know for sure what you're doing awesome. So I always tell people, treat that first part of your career like for lots of different companies. network with lots of different people to get an opportunity to get engaged in lots of different opportunities you otherwise wouldn't necessarily know about. When I was early in my career, there's different perspectives on this, but don't feel super worried about being like 5, 6, 7 years. Like, feel comfortable going into a company and working there for a couple of skills and know what to your career. You start to find the right things that have opportunity. Like that. And then the last thing, just network is always people there. The company that we ended up selling to from the bank capital, that was actually a company I didn't found that company, but I took over as their chief growth officer. And the way that I had the CFO and the founder, we had playing basketball, the CFO. And we started talking business, and because I was kind of prepared for that moment, and I've been using that word to develop superpowers, when that conversation came up, I had a lot of great strategies to help them grow their business, and then we had a lot of success from there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you first had a company, you had 2 companies while you were at school here.
Yeah.
Right, and then those didn't pan out, right? So what brought you back around the table as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so entrepreneurship is something I feel like has always been part of who I am. Like, I'm grow in that way. To that point, in my first company, I started it in the dorm, and we had a cool insurance business that would light up the sound of your voice one night. We got all these bookstores, but unit economics that was really hard. It was hard to kind of make that a profitable business. And then with our AI startup, and lots of success there, and ways that we ways that we were able to innovate space. But the gaps on that business too, where we were trying to drive a lot of value there, but there's a lot of business, and it's part of the scale of business. But I had a lot of great learnings from those businesses. Those are things that kind of drove me what I'm doing. So hopefully to be able to succeed for the company that we were able to scale, the health tech company that we ended up. A lot of my learnings from those ventures helped me to drive that business very quickly. So it's one of those things I always tell people, don't be afraid to fail, like try stuff. Things will work, some things won't, but you'll always be learning as a part of it, and those things will propel you.
So over here we have the Talkington School for Young Women. So any advice for them? So they are starting the incubator youth class. So I guess you guys are a couple classes in or a couple weeks in, or you started at the beginning of the semester?
We started in August.
Okay, yeah, so they're putting together companies, right? And you guys are gonna be pitching, I guess, whole pitch, so those people for them. But any advice for our high school students?
Yeah. So one, I'd love to hear some about some of the different businesses that are being. I think the first thing I'll say is, one, I think it's awesome that all of you get this part working on businesses when you are like more because you don't have those like I was kind of just trying out random ideas and whatnot. So I think it's fantastic that you guys are able to program and driving that forward. I think the thing I would say is kind of going back to the last point that I mentioned is like don't buy lots of things and share your idea with tons of different people. When we were younger and we were working on stuff is that we have to kind of keep this idea to ourselves. We don't like steal this idea or we're too afraid to share it with tons of people, whether they're going to steal it or we think that it won't work out and we'll be embarrassed. And share it with, the more people you can learn. You probably know tons of other smart people. You're working on it, the faster you'll be able to innovate and develop, and then put yourself out there, talk about the idea, present it, and then just continue to iterate as much as you can. You guys will have, and like I mentioned, for everyone here, you can add me on LinkedIn. I'm on every social media platform, but feel free to reach out to me if there's any way I can support you guys, help you raise capital, help you build your businesses. I'm always happy to help. So I would think all the best, but that's important.
Yeah, very smart. What was I doing? Who knows? Look at that. Anybody else? I think we have no time left, but if you have a pressing question.
Let's have one really quick one. So how do you balance social life and business life, right? Because you don't want to let the business take over your whole future, I guess. So how do you balance that connection? You're still like a human being, but you can also be like a CEO.
Yeah, so, there's a couple of ways I'll answer that question. The first thing to say is that it is important to find balance. It's important to, one, for your mental health, and I think that's what this is, in terms of just where we are today as a system and as a society. We have more clarity in terms of the impact that the stresses of our lives and how we're that balance. In terms of how we that balance, that can look different for every the things that add positivity to your day. I think the thing that I found is that when we think about trying to find balance on stuff, lots of times we're thinking about things as a measure of like what are the activities that we're doing or who will be around. But I think the best way to measure that is like what because it's easy to have lots of stresses in your life in terms of running a business and your expectations and the expectations of others. So showing that for me is just like how things engage with friends. I'll transparently say to everyone here that like I probably don't work out every day. I massages run in the morning, but I work. There's kind of I'll say this is the one that somebody is that if you want to be successful in life, there are lots of ways to be successful. Success can look different for everyone. Success could be being a billionaire. But if you want to be successful as possible, one of the things that is very important a lot of rating. We're always looking at these out there, but we're one of the popular quotes that Bill Gates has is that he says, never took a vacation. I'm not telling anyone here how to do it. But one of the reasons that is that have massive I'm not telling everyone that's what you need to do. I'm calling out this is more comfortable. But if you want to accomplish those kind of things, I think we like to imagine that you could go on first and build business. Sometimes those things. So I think for anyone who's started, you have to be prepared to embrace the fact that you will have to sacrifice to make those reality because
Quote the end on.
yeah. Yeah, so I get that question a lot. So the reality is like I got an engineering degree because I think the thing about college in general, it's about like what you learn, but to learn how to think. And I think engineering gives you a really good framework for being able to solve problems. So like I got an engineering degree because I wanted to. So that's not all I'm able to like more effective that way. And then by doing that, the other part was I was working on a tech startup while I was in college too. So I knew like I got ready to something that I didn't want to do so much here. But it's probably a really good way of thinking. So then I got at school like my focus was just like going into the tech industry and doing everything I could to have success.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And then also November 18th, the I launched the petition. If you want to see the reply Shark Tank, you'll be here. Yes.